Welcome to the Come Together Hub podcast. My name's Matt, and this morning we're going to be doing a little discussion around boundaries in and out of recovery, and I'm going to hand it over to John, who's going to kick us off.
Good morning. Boundaries for me in addiction didn't exist, neither other people's or my own. If there were boundaries, I'd push them and I wouldn't care whether I upset anyone or injured myself in any way by pushing boundaries or just taking no notice that they were there, because it wasn't something that I would do under normal circumstances, but which I don't do now. But in addiction, boundaries didn't exist. It was alcohol was my first and foremost thing on my mind, and everything else I didn't bother with. So, now my boundaries, I do have them, and I do recognise other people have them, and I try to be mindful and respectful of that. Having said that, there are times I do cross them unknowingly and get myself into trouble, but that's the way it is for me.
Yeah. So when I first came into recovery, I didn't have any boundaries like yourself in addiction, because I didn't know what that word meant, and because I didn't have any, well, I didn't understand what it meant to cross someone else's. But when I came into recovery and I started on my journey of being clean and starting to find out that I could say no or yes to things, and one of the things I learned was, if you would have asked me at the start, like, what does a boundary mean, I would have said, so for example, you're having a conversation with somebody, maybe they're talking about someone to you and you're thinking, I don't want to have this conversation, it's not comfortable, or maybe you feel like there's a bit of gossip going on. I used to think a boundary was for me to say, you need to stop doing that, like, stop this conversation now. What I learned later down the line is a boundary is actually not me trying to control the other person, but in that situation a boundary would be someone talking to me about somebody and I'm not on board with that, I don't want to gossip. It's for me to say, actually, I'm going to walk away from this conversation. If you're going to talk about that, it's your prerogative if you want to, but I'm not going to be involved in it. That was how I realised setting boundaries is not controlling the situation or somebody else. It's me looking at whether it aligns with my morals and values. Yeah. And you can set boundaries with kindness, is what I didn't understand. I used to think I had to be like, stop doing that, or I'm not going to speak to you anymore. It was just like, listen, this is not comfortable for me, so I'm going to walk away, or this friendship isn't working for me anymore. Just honest conversations, like, that's what it means to have boundaries for me these days. But I do know that setting a boundary as well and keeping a boundary are two different things. Like, I could set a boundary, but if I don't consistently enforce it, it just becomes another word out of my mouth. That can often for me be the hardest part, but I have got quite strong boundaries these days without guilt that I used to feel about setting them. Yeah, guilt was a big one.
For me personally, I'm a bit the same. I didn't really have boundaries. I grew up in prison for 15 years, so I learned the hard way boundaries. When I got out of prison, I got sent back a couple of times for crossing boundaries that I should have been aware of and I should have been abiding to. But yeah, it took me a while to learn, like yourself, that unless I keep enforcing them or keep me awareness of them, then it can be a real big issue. But yeah,
I think a bit like what you said, Nick. When I remember going into this treatment centre, and it was bizarre looking back, because like my lack of boundaries, what that instilled in me, that I had little awareness around like the things I was doing and why people was acting in certain ways to me because of that lack of boundaries. And they'd said to me in treatment, like, you've got no boundaries, but they never really like backed it up with anything. They'd just leave you with that, and I didn't really know what they meant. And now I kind of got a bit of awareness around what boundaries are, and like what a boundary is for me. It's like the limit that I'm willing to go to. Do you know what I mean? And when I go over that limit, what happens is I lose my own integrity because I've crossed my own boundary, you know, and when I cross these boundaries with other people, what happens is people start to treat you a little bit different, and it seems like people are getting pissed off with me for no reason. That's like the processes of it, because I've lost awareness again, do you know what I mean? So it's like really important for me to be disciplined in what I'm willing to do, how much I'm willing to give, you know, and like my own personal stuff at the minute is, so I do a lot of stuff with like Come Together, and I have a personal life as well, and I was talking to someone about this morning. It's like I've set myself up where I need to like rethink about my own personal boundaries, because like this phone fucking like it's the best thing and the worst thing, like because it's my personal phone but I use it for work as well, do you know what I mean? So people often cross boundaries with that, you know, so like 10 o'clock at night people will be like essays of like stuff, and what I want to say to him is like fuck off, and like okay, do you know what I mean, give us a minute, you know what I mean, and I don't do that. I just understand that like I don't owe anyone anything at that time of night, you know what I mean, and that's my personal boundary, do you know what I mean? I'm not gonna crumble to that, because a big part of my crossing boundaries was this desperate attempt for people to like me, do you know what I mean? So it was like I would go against my own integrity in an attempt for people to be alright with me, do you know what I mean? But it was having the opposite effect, do you know what I mean? It was like I wasn't liking myself, and then I'd be crossing their boundaries, you know what I mean? And then they, you know, so it was having a negative impact on my life, you know what I mean? So I think the thing with boundaries for me is consideration, respect, and discipline are like three of the most important things that I need to have, that enables me to have my own, stand in my own integrity, do you know what I mean?
Don't you find as well, I don't know if anyone in the room feels this, but so part of my recovery from addiction was looking at like resentments in my life, because obviously those feelings of disdain and anger can be like really dangerous, and without fail, like 99% of those resentments were all to do with my lack of boundaries, because I didn't say no. So somebody, you know, would ask me to do something over and over again, and because I was saying yes at the time, because I was people pleasing, I'm then resentful towards them, where really what it should take is for me to go, actually no, that's not okay, which is what I do now. So I don't have the resentments in my life that I used to, because I took responsibility. But that was obvious to me that if I really thought about when I pick up resentments, it was mainly at the time because I failed to put a boundary in. I crossed my integrity. Yeah.
See, for me, now that I'm in recovery, the one boundary that I've set that I won't cross and I won't let anyone else cross, and I adhere to, is my recovery comes first. I come first. So if someone asks me to do something, there's you know, you get harassed at all kinds of hours of the day. If someone asks me to do something on a Wednesday morning, I'm here. You know, on a Thursday, I'm at Chatty Cafe, I'm at CGL, and I don't compromise that. They're my boundaries, and I don't have an issue making that vocal to people. No, my recovery's coming first. End of. I don't care how important it is. I'm important, and so is my recovery.
Richard, have you got anything to add to that?
I had on the ward. There's only one thing I wouldn't take part in activities. Was on Sunday afternoons, the sounds of the 70s on Radio 2. I said, that's my 2 hours, and they respected that. They used to bring me tea and Kit Kats and stuff like that. But more seriously, I never really respected boundaries. I didn't really know what they were, and I never understood them. Like, particularly talking about certain subjects you're not supposed to talk about. For example, my granddad was World War One. He was one of the first flying aces, and he killed 17. Shot down 17 Germans over France, but he had a conscience about it, and you have family discussions. This is going back to the 70s, late 60s, 70s, and I'd say, what's it like, Grandad, to know you killed 17 people?
Yeah.
You can't say that. I don't know why not. And I was talking to girls, and I'd talk about anything at school, and then start talking about their periods. You boys, you're not supposed to talk about that. And I said, what? Well, you have stomach cramps and you have all this blood every month. And then I was telling the other lads, I said, you didn't talk to girls about that, did you? And I'd be getting on a bus with some of the other lads from school, and there were some ones I didn't know, and I'd be going, hi lads, how are you off to? Shh, we don't talk to them. Why don't we talk to them? Oh, because there's some row that happened about 2 years before with one of them, and there's still this resentment. And I just make friends with everybody. I had, when I was 16, I had an Afro-Caribbean friend through the hospital radio. He was in his 20s. We used to knock around together. And I invited him to my 18th birthday party, and it was all white. Apart from him, and they were all going, oh, Richard's got a black friend. I said, well, why not? He was just a friend to me. But, oh, you shouldn't, have a black friend. Mind you, it works the other way, because when I went to visit his house, he said, you're the first white person ever to have crossed the threshold. But to me, he was just a good friend.
Good guy, yeah.
So I've never really understood. I used to get in trouble at school. I got whacked at school for being cheeky, writing a really cheeky essay. I could wind the teachers up. They said, bend over, Rudy, idiot, what are you? And I go, a genius, sir. What? So I used to enjoy winding people up that set me boundaries of what you could and couldn't say.
So that's really, I know we've got to wrap up in a sec, but that's a really important thing about like boundaries. And if you look at like how we like mature in recovery, children will always push on boundaries, you know what I mean? So it's almost like we have a boundary, and the purpose of that boundary is to get right up close to it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like push on it a little bit, you know what I mean? And the discipline and the integrity of what talks about, that's there to kind of enforce that boundary, you know what I mean? So regardless of how much someone pushes up against it, with love and with compassion, this ain't budging. But we've just run out of time then. We only do like a short discussions on these topics, so if you thanks for listening. If you can please like and share and subscribe, it would be great. Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.